So what are the D&D 5e races and what are they like? What are the differences? What makes them unique? We'll give you some insight into what they play like, what goes best with them, and if they're right for you. The standard D&D 5e races are the Dwarf, the Elf, the Halfling, Human, the Gnome, Half-Orc, the Dragonborn, and the Tiefling. One of the first decisions you have to make about your character is what type of race they're going to be. The player's handbook gives you more than enough information on this, but it doesn't give you a lot of practical information about these races, and so that's what we're going to go over in this video. Human. The humans have the shortest lifespan of any race in D&D, and that can easily be seen in their ambition. They're driven by things like conquest and trade and innovation, and humans have a strong social institution that helps preserve their culture over many generations. Possibly one of the reasons that they're so oftenly played is that humans get a +1 to every one of their ability scores, and this is a very good bonus to start out with, especially if you're a new player. They also have a base walking speed of 30 feet, and they get an additional language to learn when they start out. So what are the best classes to use with the human in 5e? Well, they're kind of a jack of all trades, so they can go well with just about any class you pick, although it seems to be the most common way to play a human is to be a human fighter. That's sort of a stereotypical cliche character to play in D&D 5e. Nonetheless, still useful. Elves. Elves are beautiful creatures that live in forest villages. They're kind of one of the more Tolkien-influenced parts of D&D, along with the dwarves, but we'll get to them in a bit. They have lifespans of up to 700 years, and they are slightly shorter than humans in terms of stature, with some of them being below 5 feet in height even. Elves often go adventuring out of desire to see other places. They have kind of a lust for knowledge or getting to know the world around them. Because of their long lives, they have plenty of time to travel, so very few of them are in a rush. Bonuses. Elves begin the game with +2 to dexterity, and they have a walking speed of 30. The perception skill is automatically known by elves, and they have bonuses to resist charm spells and cannot be put to sleep by magic, which is a pretty unique ability. Elves can also see clearly in dim light, which is a little bit more of a common ability. Elves also have sub-races that you can choose from, and this goes from things like the High Elf, the Wood Elf, and the Drow, otherwise known as the Dark Elf. The High Elf gets +1 to their intelligence and proficiency in sword and bows. They also know an extra cantrip, and they get an additional language. The Wood Elf gets +1 to wisdom, and these are the ones that you probably see in Tolkien culture like Lothlorien and things like that. They get a proficiency with swords, bows, +5 to walking speed, and they get a Mark of the Wild, which allows you to hide more easily. And then finally you have the Drow, the Dark Elf, and they get +1 to charisma, they get extended dark vision, they know dancing with light at level 1, they get a Fear of Fire at level 3, and the Darkness at level 5, proficiency with rapiers, swords, and crossbows, and this is usually more geared to someone that wants to play an evil character, although nowadays D&D doesn't so much stress the fact that you have to be an evil drow anymore. So what are the best classes for elves? Well, the most popular would probably be the ranger, the wizard, or the rogue. Monk and druid are slightly less common, but they're also fairly popular. Dwarf. These are probably the most well-known race of any fantasy piece of fiction out there. The dwarves are short, stout creatures, and they're usually less than 5 feet tall. Their lifespans average around 350 years. They love forging their own weapons and armor. They love mining for precious resources. They like fashioning jewelry. Most dwarves harbor a passionate hatred for things like orcs and goblins and other underlings like that. They value family ties quite strongly. They're kind of based on Norse cultures in that regard. And dwarves often adventure out of a desire for gold or looking for ancient armor and things like that. They care a great deal about their lineage. Dwarves start with a +2 to Constitution. They have a base walking speed of 25 feet. This is probably due to their short stature. And dwarves can see in very dim light. They have bonuses to saving throws against poison, poison damage, and have proficiencies with axes and hammers. They are also very skilled in either smith's tools, mason tools, or brewer supplies. A little bit like elves, they also have sub-races, and these can range from the hill dwarf and the mountain dwarf. The hill dwarf gets +1 to wisdom, +1 to maximum HP, and an additional maximum HP each time the character levels up. This is an obvious advantage for a few reasons. The mountain dwarf, however, gets +2 to strength and has a proficiency with light and medium armor. Clearly a bit more of the battle-ready dwarf in this instance. So what are the best classes for dwarves? Well, the most common classes would definitely be the cleric or the fighter or the barbarian. These will probably be the classes you see it applied to them over and over again, and for good reason. But paladins are also somewhat common, and I can kind of see the community starting to realize that as of late. Now, easily the most Tolkien-inspired creature in D&D is the Halfling, otherwise known as the Hobbit in some circles, but in D&D it is specifically known as the Halfling. Halflings are very short. Their average height is around 3 feet. Their average lifespan are about 150 years, so a bit longer than humans. A bit, significantly longer than humans. They tend to live in rural areas, preferring simple lives filled with comforts, home, and health. Halflings love a good meal and the joy of visiting with family. They care about their family, but in less of a lineage-focused way to the dwarves. Halflings' adventures usually involve trying to keep their family or their home safe, or in pursuit of some sort of exotic food or wine or something of the like. Halflings begin with +2 dexterity, and they have a base walking speed of 25 feet, again because of their short stature. They are especially lucky, however. If you roll a 1 on an attack, ability, or saving throw roll, you can choose to re-roll it. However, you must accept the results of the second roll, even if it is a 1. Halflings also have advantage on saving throws versus being frightened. If you must make such a roll, you can re-roll a second d20 and use the higher of the 2 dice rolls. In addition, halflings have a nimbleness ability that allows them to move through the space of a creature that's larger than them, a la the Hobbit. Halflings also have their own sub-races, and these are the Lightfoot and the Stout. The Lightfoot halfling gets a +1 to charisma and is naturally stealthy, which allows you to hide behind larger creatures. The Stout halfling, however, gets +1 to constitution, an advantage in saving throws against poison, and a resistance against poison damage, which reduces it by 50%. So what are the best classes for a halfling? Well, their dex bonus and their small size and everything else that I just mentioned involving stealth makes them a very great rogue. However, a bard is a close second in terms of popularity. One of my favorite races in the game are definitely the gnomes, and they're similar in stature to halflings at about 3 to 4 feet tall. They live to be between 300 and 500 years. Gnomes are often gem cutters, engineers, alchemists. They have a sort of curiosity and a whimsical love of life. Gnomes are usually attracted to adventure for things like acquiring rare gems, some form of strange wealth, or just because they think it'll be fun. Bonuses. Gnomes get +2 to intelligence, and they have a base walking speed of 25 feet. They can see with a very small amount of light up to 60 feet away. Because of their gnome cunning, they get advantage on saving throws using intelligence, wisdom, or charisma, as well as all saving throws against magic. Gnomes also have their own list of sub-races, and this goes from things like the forest gnome, the rock gnome, and the deep gnome. The forest gnome gets +1 to dexterity, knows the minor illusionist cantrip, and can communicate with small beasts through gestures and sounds. The rock gnome, which is a little bit more of an obscure one I've noticed at the table, gets +1 to constitution. They get artificer's lore, which lets you double your proficiency bonus for history checks related to technological, alchemical, or magical items. You get tinker ability, which lets you make small mechanical objects such as clockwork toys, fire starting devices, music boxes, and others. This is definitely for more of your shifty, seedy character that you'd like to play. And finally, we have the deep gnome, and this is the most rare of all the gnome sub-races. They get +1 to dexterity, they have a dark vision of 120 feet instead of 60, and they also get stone camouflage, and this gives the deep gnome advantage on stealth checks to hide in rocky areas. Because of their high intelligence, the wizard is probably the best choice to play with the gnome. However, rogues are also a common class that people like to play. The half-orc. Half-orcs have gray skin, large teeth, and stand between 5 and 7 feet tall. They're massive. Their average human lifespan is around 75 years, so they're definitely a candle that burns twice as bright. Half-orcs are known for their strength and their savagery, and they feel the power of one-eyed god Grumsh and the creator of orcs. And as a result, they are very quick to anger and have strong passions in general. Bonuses. Half-orcs get +2 to strength and +1 to constitution, making them ample fighters. Their walking speed is 30 feet, and they begin the game with an intimidation skill. If half-orcs' hit points goes down to 0, they can choose to have them go down to 1 instead. This can only be used once, at which point he must have a long rest before regenerating the ability. This ability does not prevent an effect that causes death instead of merely reducing the hit points, however. When a half-orc player gets a critical hit, they can roll an extra damage dice and add it to the critical hit damage. And what are the best 5e classes for half-orcs? Well, the most popular choice is definitely the barbarian for obvious reasons. However, a fighter is definitely a good choice as well. The races that I've listed so far are definitely the most common. However, players can choose to be a more rare race like a dragonborn or a tiefling, provided your DM allows that sort of thing. Tieflings are descended from ancient humans who made a pact with Asmodeus, ruler of the Nine Hells. They are humanoid but have large teeth and horns. Warlock and Sorcerer are the two most popular classes to play as a tiefling. However, you can certainly be... I've seen a bard play with them multiple times. Anything that's a little bit more exotic, I would say. Dragonborn are humanoid beings that look like dragons, minus the sort of things like the tail and the wings and stuff like that. They just sort of look like humanoids with the scales and the overall color of the dragon that they hope to have descended from. The origin of the Dragonborn, however, is unknown. They are popular with people that like to play paladins and fighters and sorcerers. However, DMs tried to keep these to a minimum, and ever since the success of Skyrim, I know that a lot of DMs don't really like to let people play Dragonborns because it sort of hijacks the story. These are much more rare than the Tiefling, and for good reason. Deciding which race you want your character to be is one of the most important decisions you make when building your character. It decides what kind of base stats you get, it decides your proficiencies, it can decide everything from how you interact with your group to the world around you. It's very important to keep all of these things in mind, and I hope this video has been helpful to you in some regard. I'm Patrick Ferguson with Skullsplitterdice, and I'll see you guys next time.